Hiya, family. My name is Donna. Some of you may know me as the lady who says, young man. Well, tonight I'm going to be reading out of Herbert M Shelton's book, The Science and Fine Art of Fasting. This is for, oh, hold on, I gotta unplug my thing. Yeah, this is for all the brothers and sisters whom have messaged me because they said that they can never do a fast. And actually, this is part 14 of it. So we're realizing that the spiritual benefits that we get, because that's the secret place, you know, and the benefits that you receive from fasting, it's health too, but especially when you do it for Yahuwah, the health is just, I can't even believe how much. I'm just grateful I know, and I can share it with people I love. And again, family, this is Herbert M Shelton's book, The Science and Fine Art of Fasting. It was originally written in 1934, but it was updated, I believe, in 1949 or in the early 50s. And again, this is part 14, Death in the Fast. So here we go, family. I love you guys. Herbert M Shelton, Death in the Fast. Opponents never tire of telling us of the large number of deaths that have occurred as a result of fasting. They read the story of the death of a faster in some sensational newspaper and, without knowing anything of the circumstances of the death, repeat the story over and over. If we were to publish the story of every death of patients while being treated with poisons by the physicians, they would rise up in their organized might and denounce us for insinuating that they are a group of murderers. And this was written back in 1934, family. It is the general custom for the press to herald far and wide every death during a fast and attribute the death to starvation. The many thousands who fast and live, who fast and recover health and are not mentioned. Horrified relatives and enterprising newspaper writers are sure to see that the world receives full information about any case of death during a fast. Cases of death are often attributed to starvation, where death was due to other causes. We quite naturally expect that where thousands of cases are concerned, there will be an occasional death, whether patients fast or feast. But we may be certain that if we had some means of recording the experiences of 1,000 individuals for a period of 20 years or more, while fasting and while eating, more deaths would occur among those taking 3 meals a day than among those who fast while sick. A few years ago, Theodore Neufer of Goldsboro, Pennsylvania, was reported to have died after only 18 days without food, as the newborn baby can go longer than that without food. It is possible that Neufer died of causes other than starvation. He was 84 years old, and it was said that because of his age, he couldn't stand the strain. As numerous people of this age and older have stood the strain of much longer fast with benefits, it is still probable that his death was not due to starvation. Dewey established the fact that it is physiologically impossible to starve to death before the skeleton condition is reached. By this is meant the mere weight of the skeleton and viscera. This fact has not been fully understood by many of the cases of death occurring long before the skeleton conditions is reached. While there is still considerable flesh, even fat, on the body, sometimes indeed within a few days after starting the fast, and declare that these instances disprove Dewey's contention. Physiologists, on the other hand, estimate that strong adults die when they lose 2/5 of the body weight. 2/5 of the body weight, family. It must first be noted that instances of such deaths in fasting are extremely rare. Instances of prolonged fasting by people of all ages and in all possible physical conditions are very common. Such deaths are, as will be seen, exceptions rather than the rule, and are to be accounted for in some other way than on the assumption that they resulted from starvation. For example, there is the testimony of Miss Marie Davenport Vickers, the Mazdazane, February 1906, page 28, who fasted 42 days to good health from April 19th to June 1st, 1904. She tells us that on 2 former occasions, before she knew anything of fasting, other than having seen it mentioned in the Bible scriptures, she was forced to go without food for some days owing to the lack of funds with which to purchase it. She says, "And I did almost starve to death. I was once called to see a woman on the 14th day of the fast she had undertaken at home. She was a large, fat woman with high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, etc. I did not like the general aspect of the case and advised that she break her fast. She refused and in another day began to vomit. 3 days later, she fainted while coming from the bathroom. This frightened her. She never overcame her fright. Perhaps she would have done so had a meddlesome and know-it-all daughter not kept her fear-engendering suggestions day and night. I have always been convinced that the chief cause of death in this case was fear. It certainly was not starvation. For death, she weighed nearly 200 pounds. In Hardy's lectures on chemical pathology, he tells us that death from inanition is not a possibility till the body has lost at least 1/3 of its normal weight. Sick people are dying all the time. People seldom turn to fasting until they are desperate. It is inevitable that among such a desperately ill class of people, a few deaths will occur. A physician who discovered a new cure for illness and was permitted to use it only upon cases that had been given up by all other doctors would be looked upon as a great physician if he effected only an occasional cure. It is an indisputable fact that of the thousands who go upon a fast to enable them to recover from their ills, most of them have suffered for years and have given regular and irregular physicians unlimited opportunity to effect their recovery. In thousands of fasts, ranging from a few days to 60 and even 90 days, no deaths have occurred that could be attributed to the fast. In every case where an autopsy has been made, this has revealed an organic disease which would have resulted in death with or without food. Dr. Dewey properly maintained that if one's vitality is so nearly exhausted, or if a vital organ is so badly damaged that that death is near at hand. The result is absolutely certain: eating or fasting. Most people turn to fasting as a last resort instead of the first resort. They turn to it after their bodies have been wrecked and ruined by years of wrong living, drugging, and surgical operations. Under such circumstances, we naturally expect that an occasional patient will die even while fasting. Honesty and fairness will not attribute death under these conditions to the fast. We should bear in mind that of the thousands of patients treated in the regular way and regularly fed, plenty of good nourishing food, a large percentage die. How absurd, then, to blame fasting for the exceedingly small number of cases that have died while fasting, when, too late, they turn to this method of healing. Dr. S. Leaf of England says in June 1929 issue of Health for All, during 18 years experience in the treatment of thousands of cases, we have not known a single case where death took place as a result of fasting. See, family, it's good for us. We don't have to fear it. Dewey not only emphasized the fact that it is physiologically impossible to starve to death before the skeleton condition is reached, but he also emphasized the fact that nature will always demand food long before this stage is reached, providing it as a remediable case. That people have died before the skeleton stage is reached is true, but in such instances, death has been due to causes other than starvation. Too many people turn to fasting as a last resort, whereas it should be the first resort. If, standing with one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel, they attempt to fast as a last desperate attempt to save life, and they die while fasting, the fast should not be blamed for the death. Fasting is a natural, vital process, and no such process is injurious unless it is wrongly used or overused. Writing in Physical Culture, September 1912, Dr. Linda Burfield Hazard says, when severe and distressing manifestations arise during the period of abstinence from food, it is virtually certain that defects in organisms lie within. Post-mortem examination of bodies of patients who have died while the fast was in progress give proof beyond confutation to this all-important point. And in these cases, it was further demonstrated that death would have occurred fasting or feeding. In a letter to Mr. R.B. Pearsons dated November 18, 1919, Dr. Hazard writes, in 16 years, actual active practice, she has fasted nearly 2,500 cases with 18 deaths. In every case of death, a post-mortem never failed to reveal organic defects which made death the inevitable outcome, fasting or feeding. Then she adds, I have never turned a patient away. Dr. Dewey says, the no breakfast plan and fasting cure, page 31, as the months and years went on, it so happened that all my fatalities were of a character or not to involve in the least suggestions of starvation, while the recoveries were a series of demonstrations as clear as anything in mathematics or evolving strength of all the muscles, of all the senses and faculties as the disease declined. For years I saw patients grow in the strength of health without the slightest clue to the mystery, until I chanced to open a new edition of Yale's Physiology at the page where I found this table of estimated losses that occur in death after starvation. And light came as if the sun had suddenly appeared in the zenith at midnight. Instantly I saw in human bodies a vast reserve of pre-digested food. I now knew that there could be no death from starvation until the body was reduced to the skeleton conditions. I could now know that to die of starvation is a matter not of days, but of weeks and months, certainly a period far beyond the average time of recovery from acute disease. Death during a fast cannot occur, says Dr. Hazard, unless there is organic disease, and not then unless the organ or organs affected are in such degenerated state as not to permit of repair. And it is conclusively demonstrated that in a scientifically directed fast, although death is in the conditions cited cannot be averted, yet because of organic labor lessened, life is prolonged for days or weeks, and distress and pain, if present, are much alleviated. Tilden says, it is safe to say that when anyone dies while going without food, it is due to the fact that he died from the disease before the fast could be extended long enough for it to be thrown off, or from fright, or from lack of proper nursing, being allowed to freeze to death. It is a mistake to associate in mind the two terms, fasting and starving, as one and the same. It requires great skill to fast a patient properly. Any fool can starve a patient to death. There are conditions in the bodies of many patients which lead to death inevitably. If one so afflicted dies while fasting, everyone is only too willing to place the blame for death upon the fast. Dr. Hazard says that in her experience, death during a fast never has occurred when merely functional disorder was present, nor did it ever result for the sole reason that fast was withheld. True starvation begins only when the body has been reduced to the skeleton and the viscera, Dr. Dewey declares. When death occurs before the skeleton condition is reached, it is always due to old age or some form of disease or injury, and not to starvation. The organism deprived of income must draw upon its capital to meet the expenses of living. Life endures as long as the reserve capital lasts. He records the case of a frail, spare boy of 4 years, whose stomach was so disorganized by a drink of a solution of caustic potash that not even a swallow of water could be retained. He died on the 75th day of his fast, with the mind cleared to the last hour, and with apparently nothing of the body left but bones, ligaments, and a thin skin. And yet the brain had lost neither weight nor functional clearness. In another city, a similar accident happened to a child of about the same age, in whom it took 3 months for the brain to exhaust entirely the available body food. If such a prolonged period is required for small boys to starve to death, death from starvation is certainly a remote possibility in the average adult who carries a much larger reserve of food. It should not be overlooked that the length of time any individual can live without food is determined by the amount of reserve food stored in his body or her body. The fat person can go without food much longer than the thin person. The average patient need have no fear of starving before he recovers from his trouble. I have fasted patients for as much as 20 days who were skin and bones at the outset of the fast. In no instance has such a patient been injured by the fast. If fear and worry are absent, if the faster is warned and not forced to exert himself, he may go without food for a long period, not only without damage to his body, but with actual benefit. The American Encyclopedia shows that in Brown Sicard as saying, in man, as in animals, the immediate cause of death from starvation is a decline in the animal temperature. Death is accelerated by cold and delayed by the presence of moisture in the atmosphere. Pashutin mentions the case of a man whose temperature remained normal through a 50-day fast and says, however, we know from the experiments upon animals that only when the total of the body reserves is consumed, the body temperature decreases markedly. It is suggested that the true mode of death from starvation is from want of heat, due no doubt to lack of combustible material at the end. Shosat found in starving animals that when death seemed imminent, restoration could be affected by the application of artificial heat. The American Encyclopedia recounts that M Shelton deprived a number of animals, birds and small mammals, of all subsistence, and carefully observed the phenomena that followed, and his experiments throw much light upon the subject of starvation. The temperature in all the animals was maintained at nearly the normal standard until the last day of the last day of life, when it began rapidly to fall. The animals, previously restless, now became quiet, as if stupefied. They fell over on their side, unable to stand. The breathing became slower and slower. The pupils dilated. The insensibility grew more profound. And death took place either quietly or attended with convulsions. If when these phenomena were fully developed, external warmth was applied, the animals revived, their muscular force returned. They moved or flew about the room and took greedily to the food that was presented to them. If now they were again left to themselves, they speedily perished. But if the external temperature were maintained until the food taken was digested, and from the feeble condition of their digestive organs, this often took many hours, they recovered. The immediate cause of death seemed to be cold rather than starvation. Carrington gives 76 degree Fahrenheit at the lowest temperature at which life has survived in human beings. Although we know that some warm-blooded animals hibernating have survived a body temperature as low as 2 degrees centigrade. Despite the fact that one maintains normal body temperature on a fast, or even has a rise in temperature, there is a feeling of chilliness in a moderate temperature in which one ordinarily feels comfortable. This is due to decreased cutaneous circulation. Several theories have been offered to account for death from starvation, for it is known that death is not due to exhaustion of stored food, since fat and other stores may persist in appreciable amounts, but none of them are adequate. The following are the most prominent theories that have been offered to account for death. 1. Impoverishment of the blood resulting from the loss of solids. 2. Fall of temperature, obviously not applicable to cold-blooded animals. 3. Inability of organs to utilize remaining reserve stores. Inability not explained. 4. Asphyxia resulting from paralysis of respiratory center by accumulation of toxic materials. 5. Auto-intoxication produced by toxins resulting from disordered metabolism of malnourished tissues. 6. It is suggested that the death is due to infection due to lowered resistance. 7. Also to disorders of the ductless glands, as all these conditions were present in varying degree. It has been suggested that the immediate cause of death may vary according to circumstances. The loss of weight in total in a nation in animals resulting in death runs from 30 to 65%, averaging about 40%, but varies with the age of the animal, the temperature and activity, as well as with different kinds of animals. Certain arthropoda can sustain a loss of 90% of body weight before life ends. In many cases of fasting in men, death has not resulted until after a loss of 60 to 70% of body weight. Margulis found that the collie, a high-strung nervous dog, dies after a loss of only 30% of body weight, whereas other animals recovered health after a weight loss of 60%, which suggests that mental and nervous peculiarities need to be taken into account in the conduct of a fast. We see many striking examples of this principle in fasting nervous people. We never permit them to go without food long enough to result in death, but many of them do not stand fasting as well as the non-nervous types. Starvation can come only after the body is reduced to the skeleton condition, death resulting then more as a result of cold than anything else. This means that no one will ever starve to death as a result of fasting in disease. If death occurs at all during the fast, it would not occur in the time required to recover from practically all diseased states. Pashutin records the case of a girl who drank sulfuric acid and ruined her digestive tract. He says some liquid food was given for 4 months, but not believed absorbed as it was eliminated too rapidly, and no chlorides in urine at all. Last 16 days, no food at all. In this case, the body temperature did not begin to decline until the last 8 days of life. Fasts of long duration are on record. Mr. McFadden records one of a 90 days. 9 of the Cork hunger strikers fasted for 94 days. Thousands have fasted up to 40 days and longer. Many fasts have gone to 50, 60, and 70 days and longer. McSweeney died on the 78th day of his fast. While this hunger strike was on, I heard Dr. Lindler tell of a fast of 70 days, which he conducted. Dr. Dewey records one of 3 months. In none of these cases has there ever developed deficiency, diseases, nor has death ever been due to so-called acidosis. It would seem that a deficiency disease can only develop when the body is being filled with denatured foods. Did you hear that, family? I'm going to repeat that again. It would seem that a deficiency disease, quote unquote, can only develop when the body is being filled with denatured foods. Its vast store of reserves seems to be well balanced. It is known that the blood has almost unlimited power of resisting alkalinity, acidosis, alkalinity, alkalinity, acidosis, for it will die before turning acid. More remarkable proof that death is hygienic fasts is due to irremediable or organic troubles and not to starvation. is the fact that it has been found that in every case where death occurred, there still remained considerable subcutaneous fat, and this is always entirely absent in death by starvation. The heart has been found to be normal in all cases, except where normal development had never occurred, while in real starvation, the heart is always markedly atrophied and contracted. The blood has always been found to be practically normal in volume with no real anemia, while in starvation there is a marked decrease in the relative blood volume with a marked anemia. In death during hygienic fasts, the And after this live, family, I'm coming back and we're going to do Acts part 3. Okay, here we go. The pancreas has been found to be either not affected at all or but slightly. In starvation, this organ is almost entirely absent. Here, let me emphasize the fact that the destructive and degenerative conditions found in animals which have been used in laboratory experiments in inanition are due to starvation and not to fasting. The line of demarcation between fasting and starving is distinct and unmistakable, although few, if any, laboratory investigators have ever recognized it. We know that it is only when the total of the body's reserves have been utilized that death from starvation can occur, and it is only then that nature will permit any vital organ to be damaged. The autopsy in every case of death while fasting shows that there was some serious organic disease which made death inevitable, whether the patient fasted or ate plenty of good, nourishing food. Indeed, it may be affirmed with a reasonable degree of certainty that deaths would have come sooner in practically every instance except for the fast. Sinclair says, it is perfectly true that males have died of starvation in 3 or 4 days, but the starvation existed in their minds. It was fright that killed them. As an example of the part that mental disturbances may play in the fast, I will cite the case of a woman friend who started out to fast for a complication of chronic ailments. Sorry, family. She was rather stout and did not mind it at all, was going cheerfully about her daily tasks, but her husband heard about it and came home to tell her what a fool she was making of herself, and in a few hours she was in a state of complete collapse. No doubt if there had been a physician in the neighborhood, there would have been another tale of a victim of a shallow and unscrupulous sensationalist. Fortunately, however, business called the husband away again, and the next day the woman was all right and completed an 8 days fast with the best results. Bear this in mind, so that if you wake up some morning and find your temperature subnormal and your pulse at 40 and your arms too weak to lift you, and if your friends get round you and tell you that you look like a mummy out of a sarcophagus of the 17th dynasty, you may be able to smile at them good, naturedly, and tell them that you will never again eat until you are hungry. Fear of the fast should certainly be avoided. I do not doubt that well-meaning, misguided relatives and friends of fasters have caused the death of more than one by their cultivation of fear in the fasting individual. One hesitates to say that a loving son or daughter kills his or her mother or father, yet the evidence certainly points this way in more than one case. We should encourage and cooperate with the faster and not frighten him to death. Well, family, that's it for part 14, the science and fine art of fasting. And it's quite interesting, isn't it? It's all in our head. Like, and also, did you see what it said about the bad foods, about how they it was part 13, where it also talked about how bad foods actually depletes all your vitamins and minerals and everything you need. So it's better just to not eat it all than to eat junk. And also, I believe it's Dr. Jason Fung. He is a kidney specialist, and he actually has several books on fasting, and that's where I found out about fasting from him. But the average quote-unquote thin person still has 100,000 calories of fat on their body before it will go to your muscles and everything else, because it eats all of your trash. It's like the pig of our bodies. It just eats up everything. You know what I mean? It eats up everything for fuel. And it is true. And when you fast, I mean, you will be totally amazed. But there's no reason to fear. They want us to think, oh, we're going to be zombies and we're going to be, what's that called? Cannibalistic. No, we don't have to. We're just going to make sure the children are all right. You know what I mean? The babies are all right. But yeah, it's all fear, family. And this book was written in 1934, 91 years ago. So I'll be back in about 10 minutes, and I'm going to be doing part 3 of the Manasseh, the book of Acts, out of the Hallelujah Scriptures. I love you, family. Shalom.